Welcome to Fiberchats. Today I'm continuing with the Humans of Westknits, and we're going to be talking about clue number 4. If you are new to my channel, I've been doing this series where I talk to people just like you, participants of this year's Mystery Knit Along by Westknits called Twists and Turns. And we are sharing our thoughts and our ideas and tips and tricks about different clues. So today is clue number 4. How are you liking the MKAL so far?
I love it. It's my first one. I was kind of nervous to do it because everybody talks about like how many techniques you're going to learn and how big the shawls end up and like the timeline. And I was like, I don't know. But I kind of like pre-gamed a little bit. So I made this shawl in September because I kind of wanted to get a feel for like Steven's way of writing patterns and like just kind of see like, is this something that I'm going to enjoy? And I really, really, really loved making this one. So I was like, all right, I'm still in. I don't know what's going to happen, but it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And I also kind of subscribe to the philosophy of if you pick the colors right, whatever the final product is will probably be wearable. Like even if like maybe there are some elements in it that you don't love. And so far, I love all the elements. Well, that's not true. There's one little tiny piece that I'm kind of like iffy on. But other than that, like I think my shawl's coming together really nicely just because I love the like colors I picked. So
Okay, let's talk about that one little piece. What are you hesitant about?
it's that like final chevron piece that kind of makes it look like a bat. So like I'm probably skipping that. Also, I'm like running out of yarn. I don't know what I feel like I just knit like quote normal, but like I was already into my second ball on like that second side. So like once I got kind of to the flaps, I was like, okay, maybe this will be all right. Then I saw that we were connecting the flaps and the sides, and I thought, oh, I don't know if I have enough yarn. So I'm weighing it. I'm like kind of knitting a couple of stripes and then weighing it and kind of trying to make sure that I have enough. But I don't think I'll have enough for like both of those side panels and also that like little bat wing piece.
Well, I'm the loosest knitter on the planet. Like I have a bad reputation for that. I mean, my tension, unlike Martin's, is like superbly even, but I'm like on the spectrum of loose to tight. I'm on that side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And I actually did like that little flap that you're talking about, that you're thinking about. I actually thought it connects the whole thing, like brings it to the finish. So I decided that I was running out of yarn as well. So I decided I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna break my head what I'm doing with the wings, like maybe introduce the forest color somewhere out there. But I just finished the first wing, and I definitely have enough yarn for the second wing, and it's probably gonna be so. It's like I was surprised how little yarn actually goes into the third wing. So you might be,
Oh,
you might be.
okay. Well, if I have enough yarn, maybe I will do that. I was also thinking of like maybe kind of doing like a 3-color stripe for that section and like having my color pop be like one of the stripes just in case, like if I started running out. So we'll see. I also feel like that like little piece, like I love how it looks in the center, but I feel like that makes the shape kind of awkward, like on the sides. So we'll see. I was gonna put like some pom-poms or tassels though on the like loops. So like that might help kind of elongate and give it a little bit like more of a U shape, I guess. So
Well, I mean, you'll figure it out when you get there. You'll see
yeah.
what you want to do with it. But what's your impression overall about how these clues were divided work-wise?
Oh, that's a spicy question. That's a spicy question. I feel like, I mean, clue 1 was a beast. I think everybody struggled. Some people are continuing to struggle for clue 1. I don't know how else it could have been divided. So I feel like the first clue was like pretty fine. The second clue, I think, was also a ton of knitting. I might have wanted to see the cables maybe not added in the second clue and like kind of shuffle to the third clue just to kind of give it a little bit more like evenness and like the amount of knitting. Cause then the third clue was like almost no knitting. Like I think if you're if you struggle with like twisted stitches, or you have to use a cable to do those like little 2-stitch stitches, like it'll probably take longer. But I think I did one flap in like a day or something. And so it just wasn't very much knitting, but I was like basically like power knitting the first 2 clues. So it was nice. But I think for somebody like me who tries to stay on a schedule, I knew I was going to try to finish every clue on time, which I didn't do. Like, I think I was a day or 2 late for like each one. But then I was like overconfident on the third one and didn't finish that one either, because I took several days of like working on some other stuff to be like, oh, well, that's just like 2 flaps. It's fine. And then I was finishing it watching in clue 4. So that didn't quite work out. But yeah, I think the third clue was weirdly very tiny in a way that I probably wouldn't have divided it. Like I think I would have added, like I said, either those cables from clue 2 or like, I guess there's not really a good way to divide up clue 4. So yeah, probably just switch the cables.
Right. I mean, you talk about how people were talking about like learning new techniques with each of the MKAL. Are you learning something new with this one?
Yeah, that like braided I-cord thing, I've never seen that before. I definitely haven't ever done it. I really like how it looks. Like, I was doing a lot of muttering to myself with all that casting on and casting off. But after I got maybe 5 or 6 stripes in, and I started to kind of like finger knit those like, I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like, okay, I hate this, but also this is really cool. I'm very excited about this. So yeah, that I'm going to have to figure out how to add that somewhere. I feel like I could see it like maybe like in a yoke, or like kind of like at the bottom of a sweater and a hem, or just like something. I think finishing off the loops is tricky because I don't really want like tassels or something like hanging from a sweater. But yeah, that's a technique that I think is just really cool. I really love it.
Right. How inventive are you usually in your knitting? Do you like to follow
Inventive.
do you like to follow the pattern, or do you always insert a piece of yourself in there?
I mean, I always follow the patterns. I do always follow. So shawl knitting for me has often been like, I would say like process knitting. Like, it's usually like I'm learning cables or I'm learning lace. And so I don't have a ton of shawls. So that's also why I wanted to do the MKAL, because like Steven's just great at like pushing you to think about just knitwear in general in like a more exciting way. And I'd been knitting kind of boring shawls for a while, like single color, like open lace shawls, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I've been knitting for forever. So like there really wasn't much to learn in any of those shawls. It was just kind of like, all right, well, this is like a repeating lace pattern. Cool. I think where I play is in my color choices. So I like to pick different colors. I like to pick different weights of yarn. I like to add in, like, this has Malabrigo silk paca as like one of the colors instead of doing like all fingering weights. And that just gives the shawl like more movement, more color, more dimension. So I do follow the pattern, but I try to like put my stamp on it by like kind of unusual color choices and like different like textures.
Was it more difficult to choose colors for this shawl because you didn't know what it's gonna look like?
It was. And also I had just made this. So the kit that I bought was, what was it called? It was something Greyhound. I don't remember what the full thing was, but it was basically like a medium to dark gray, a light gray, and then like a mustard. And I was really excited about that kit. And I waited. I like woke up early and was like primed to purchase that kit. Cause I was like, if it sells out, what am I going to do? My life will be over, which is of course absurd. I will just go to my local store and buy some yarn. It's fine. But I really wanted that kit because I hadn't worked with walk yarn before. And then when I ordered it, because I got it, I also got another color pop. I thought, well, hang on, that's kind of the shawl I just made. So then I was like, I can't make another gray and yellow scarf or a shawl. Like, that feels a little too much. So luckily I'd gotten this like hot pink, La Bien-Aimé's As If. And that was just because I wanted it. I'd seen it somewhere and it was so pretty. And I thought, I'm just going to get a skein of that while I'm ordering this kit. And then as it was traveling across the ocean, I was like, wait a minute, I could just swap out the pink for the mustard, and then that isn't the shawl I just made. So yeah, that it was difficult because I was like really kind of worried that like they weren't going to play well together. Like the way the color pop was going to work would be kind of weird, but the way he's done it is like, I'm so obsessed with my shawl. I think the people here are tired of me being like, this is so like, guys, this shawl is so, they're just like, yeah, you picked great colors, but I'm still really like in love with it. And like, just, yeah. So
Can you show us?
Yes. So
Oh, I love your colors.
thank you. So and then I started on clue. Where am I? Nope, it's on this side where the needles is. And then I started on clue 4. So I've got, and even the way that stripe is happening without the chevrons, I think is really great. So yeah, I really couldn't have asked for more. Even if I do the weird little extra section, it's not going to take away from the shawl because I watched how Steven wore it and I think it looks gorgeous on. And you saying that like you didn't run out of yarn like makes me like, and I'm also going to do the embellishments, but I wanted to like finish first and really sit with like the options that I've got because I have like this dark/hot pink speckle, and that feels like it wants to be like kind of those I-cord embellishments, but I'm not sure. So
Yeah, or even purple could go something like a little darker than that pink.
yeah,
Gorgeous.
thank you.
So you think we're gonna join next year, MKAL?
Yeah, like even I know that there are people who are disappointed. I'm sad for them. I'm really happy. But even if I like didn't like the colors I picked and like didn't like the way that it was turning out, it's just been really fun. Like I love being part of the knitting community. For a long time I didn't have a knitting community, and like it's just really cool to like see so many people like excited about it and working on it and like sharing tips and like doing hacks, and like I just really like that. And you don't get that with a lot of other people's CALs. Like you kind of, people kind of they start the CAL and then they disappear for 2 months and then they come back with their finished object. But this feels very much like every week everyone's like, okay, here's where I'm at and here's what's happening. And what color should I change my color? It's just like kind of, yeah, it's just like a really cool experience.
Have you had any disasters along the way? Like Martin had his tension disaster. I made so many mistakes that I had to like undo. I actually just made a huge mistake yesterday with the 4th clue, where somehow I managed to pick not every stitch, but every other stitch. Don't ask me how. And I ended up with like 13 stripes. And then when I came almost to the top, I was like, okay, that doesn't look right. So I just undid the whole thing and
Oh no.
so like I've had like a bunch of moments like that. Have you had anything similar happen to you?
No, I haven't had anything. Nothing's gone awry. Well, I won't call it a disaster. I'll call it a misunderstanding of Steven's pickup instructions. So like that is a technique I've learned. I don't do a lot of I cords. I definitely do them now. And like picking up on an I cord edge all of the time, like the first couple of times that I had to do it, I was confused about like which stitch was the right one. And so I just kind of committed to one stitch and then was like, all right, well, this is what this side looks like. So now I've just got to match this for all the other I cords. I don't know if I picked up the right one or not, but I like how it looks and it's consistent across like all the sections. So I'm going with that. But that I think was probably the first time because I did it and it looked really wonky. And I was like, this definitely is wrong. I had to pull it back out.
Did you enjoy the Humans of Westknits series?
I did. So I think that was part of like the community building, right? Like kind of like the first episodes where people were talking about their color choices and then people kind of like walking through like their different sections and like how they felt about it. I just thought it was like really fun. And seeing like other people's interpretations of the shawl was like really nice. And like the questions that you asked, like, people to like reflect on. I think it's just like a really fun experience, and that like helps you like kind of pull out some folks to talk to, because like yes, there's Instagram, but like that's like kind of overwhelming to just be scrolling like thousands of projects. This was like a much more targeted, like here's what I chose and here's what's going on. And like Martin's like purling disaster had me like, he did it before I got to that section, so I was like, all right, I'm going to knit like one section, one wedge, and then check because I don't want to get done and realize that like they're like totally different. And yeah, I think like you, like my tension has always been like spot on. So I didn't have that problem, and I love purling. So I was really happy I didn't have to switch it to like all knits because I kind of was waiting for like the meditative purling purling section. But yeah, I think the series has just been really cool, and I'm really excited to be part of it.
Well, you mentioned that you've been knitting for like forever and ever. Do you think this MKAL making you a different knitter?
I think so. I think I like I said before, like I am very much a pattern follower. I won't say I'm boring. Because I am like kind of known as like a color person. But I have started thinking more about like what's some wilder stuff I can make. Like what kind of base can I have for my wardrobe that like can be accented by like the knitting that I make rather than the knitting being kind of like a more store-bought looking garment, which is kind of like more what I do. Like they're chunky and they're interesting and they're different colors, but they're not that innovative. They're not that like outlandish. And like the older I get, the bolder I get. And so like now I'm kind of like, all right, I would not really wear hot pink. Like I've never really been a pink person, but I'm like this shawl on like something I've sewn or some type of like all black outfit is like a statement piece. And like I'm so excited to wear it in like the dead of winter because it just like glows. So yeah, I am thinking now more about like statements with my knitting rather than just like I knit this and it's pretty, which is like kind of like what my style has been so far.
I think you're totally gonna rock this show.
Thank you.
How are you doing with the mystery knit along?
I'm doing okay. I finished the first step of clue 4 last night, a bit late, but I wanted it done. So far I'm keeping up with what I hope to keep up with.
Well, when you looked at the clue 4, did you think it like brought the whole shawl together?
I think so, yes. In that the stripes in this first section echo the stripes in the very first part of it. So I think that when both sides are done and it's anchored by what he's got at the bottom, which I haven't fully explored yet, it will come together. That's been my experience in MKALs, but the last part does bring it together, even if at first I'm like, not sure about that.
Well, you've done a few of those, right?
Mm-hmm.
As your background can.
Yes, this is my third MKAL. Yeah.
How are you enjoying this one in comparison to the previous two?
This one I've had a little less time than I had last year. So it's been a little harder for me to keep up. And I really like to keep up. And I like to think I'm not competitive, but I think I really am. I see everybody posting stuff and I'm like, oh no. But there was a lot of knitting in the first and second clues. And the second clue, I thought it looked so much easier than the first that I thought it wouldn't take me very long, but it did. That said, in every clue, I'm forced to do something that I don't normally like doing, like picking up stitches or knitting through the back loop or purling through the back loop is actually the thing I don't like. So it's been good practice in that sense.
How did you enjoy cabling those 1-by-1 cables?
I did it by his method without the cable needle. I've done the shawl I'm wearing actually is the cable trellis that he had last year for Harbor Knit Along. And this had a slightly bigger cable that he did without a cable needle. And I learned that way, but this way was actually different, I believe because of the twist. So it took me a while. And this yarn I'm using for Twists and Turns is very slippery. So I really did have to grip, but I got really good at it by the end.
Me too. I feel like I'm
Exactly. I could do anything. Yeah.
Well, when you think about like all the shawls that you knitted by Stephen West, was it difficult for you to pick colors this year because you've done so many different color variations?
Yeah, I had made a decision to try to do something different because the first year when I did Slip Stravaganza, that was right in 2020 and we were in lockdowns and, all sorts of stuff. And I just put this riot of color in there and I love it. It's one of my favorite things I've ever made. But the last year I thought, well, I'm going to go quieter. And so I went these kind of muted folly tones and there wasn't much contrast in some of the areas and I just loved it. And this year I looked at all the shawls I had and I'm like, none of them have a light palette like that felt calming to me. So I picked out some yarn and I wasn't even sure it was going to work even halfway through. But now I think it is. It's low contrast for the most part and very different from anything I've done before. But I'm liking it. And I think part of what I bring to the MKAL that's different from when I knit a shawl that I know it's going to look like is I look much more at color and just say, do I like these colors sitting together, caked up on a picture? And if so, I figure it's going to work.
Right.
whereas going for the
Like
design.
what you mentioned, that you weren't sure you're gonna like it halfway through, because when I started knitting, before I started to knit this shawl, I absolutely loved my colors. Like I went to the mystery knit along loving the combination. After the first clue, I really loved my colors. After the second clue, I really hated that shawl. I was like, never again will I participate in MKAL. I don't know what he was thinking this time. How did I get myself sucked into this thing? After the third clue, I still didn't like my colors, and I was sure that like if I knew what the shawl looks like at the end, I would never pick these colors. I would go with something variegated, something less contrasty. And now I love the shawl. So I went full circle.
Yeah. And it's a funny thing because it's, you know, I always look when he does the MKAL at the kits he has, and I haven't bought one yet just because I have so much yarn and it feels like between me and my local yarn store, I can usually put it together. But I look at what he's doing and get some hints from that and he was going pretty subtle this year compared to some years. And I thought, okay, well, subtle. And then I thought, do I want speckles? Do I want, a tonal? Do I want something more subtle? And so I went for more subtle. But it's the structure of this shawl relies a lot on the texture. And so I think if I'd gone, one of the other ideas I had was a very dark, less high contrast. And I think that wouldn't have worked. It still would have been lovely, but you would have missed a lot of the textures in it. So I go back and forth. But in the end, I think it will be a beautiful thing because it just has so much wonder in its creation.
Can we see yours?
Yes, it's kind of unwieldy because it's got, let's see, this is the side I haven't done yet with the long thing. I don't know what to call that. So there's the first clue. When I looked at that, I thought, don't know what to do with that. So this is how far I've gotten, to hide myself a little bit, I think, and really what turned me around with, after when I did those cables, I really love cables. But when we finished, I guess it was clue 2 with those cables, I just went, wow, that looks so odd to me. Like it just doesn't fit. And then when we got to clue 3 and we had those I-cores going in there, I thought, oh, that's the magic, right? That's the magic. So the first thing I did with that clue was I sat down, I had a work meeting that I didn't have to pay as much attention in, and I sat down and knitted all the I-cores.
I mean, is there like any part of this Mr. Knit Along that you didn't enjoy?
Well, I would say clue 1 was a labor for me. If I was a person who didn't look ahead, I don't know how I would have persevered through, the casting off and the casting on, because it was just, repetitive and kind of tedious. I got better at doing those things as I went. I picked up tips from the Ravelry group and from other people that were knitting, use a DPN here, and then you don't have to turn it all the way around, and that speeded it up. But that was, pursuit of a goal.
I mean, do you think like you becoming a better knitter after each and every one of his shawls?
I do. I mean, I've knitted for a long time, on and off in spurts, and but I tended to knit very similar things. Do you know what I mean? And fairly simple things. And the thing about the MKAL, like when I did Slip Stravaganza, I had done a few very small shawls, like with my local knitting group. But I was so overwhelmed by Slip Stravaganza. It was just huge, and all of it was new. So I feel like I learned things that I wouldn't ever try to learn, and I make things that I wouldn't necessarily try. I learn really well from watching videos. That's just a good way for me to learn. So the amount of time that goes into the videos for the MKALs really teaches me a lot. Like I had taken a wonderful brioche class, but it's like most things, when you don't practice it, you forget it. So then when we had brioche last year in shawlography, I just sat there with that video over and over and over, and I still messed it up once and had to take it back out. But then by the end, I had it.
Did you make any mistakes with this shawl?
Yes. I found only yesterday, when I was kind of spritzing the whole thing to make it look a little better, that I had in those first chevron things. I had, I guess, knitted a row and I was supposed to purl a row in the contrast color section. And you really don't notice it. But then when I was looking at it, I was like, oh man, but I'm not going to rip out the whole shawl and fix it. I dropped a bunch of I cords. Like I knit kind of quickly and I knit continental. So I'm kind of pushing around when I'm doing those I cords. And I would find these stitches way down and I have to get them back up. I found another drop stitch in one section. I've got one glitch in somehow one of my cables, the lineup of the cable and the twisted rib in the first section, although the second section came out perfect. And I'm not sure what I did right and what I did differently, So yes, my shawls always have
beauty marks.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
That's what makes it yours.
Yeah.
I mean, you knit his shawls regularly and then you participate in mystery knit along. How is it different for you? Like what mystery knit alongs brings to your life that a regular shawl by Stephen West wouldn't?
It's really the community aspect, knowing that there are all these people knitting the same thing and seeing how different a pattern looks depending on yarn. It's just amazing to me. And I get connected with all these people all over the world. Like I have these Instagram friends that are, in Germany and England and Australia and all these places. And they might knit other than the MKAL very different things than I do. So I also learn from that. And just the community, even within like the Ravelry group, when I did Slipstravaganza, I was a much less skilled knitter than I think I am now. And some of that stuff, I would post a question in the Ravelry group and people would just jump to help you. Not just moderators, just everybody. So that community aspect of it is really energizing for me. And I also have, in general, usually 2 or 3, real life friends who are also knitting along. So it's fun to, see where we are and see the yarn they pick and then put them on together and take a picture.
Well, when you think about your outfits, is shawl an accessory or is an outfit an accessory to the shawl?
Well, I dress very plainly. Like what I have on now is what I wear almost all, like, I don't always wear black, but I dress pretty plainly. So the shawl really makes my outfit. And I wear shawls a lot. I work mostly from home, so I spend a lot of time on Zoom. And I wear shawls a lot when I'm on even work Zooms. I like to wear, I'm always cold too. So even around the house, I like to wear shawls. And when you go to the knitting group, they're my favorite thing to make because I don't have to fit them. I make a lot of sweaters, but fit is always the struggle with sweaters, no matter how well you swatch.
Do you think like Stephen's shawls always strike a conversation, like of you when you wear them?
In the circles I'm in, yes. I went to a work event a couple weeks ago and I had shawlography on, and there were a few knitters in the room who like came across the room to talk to me about it. So they definitely get attention, and I think it's good attention because otherwise I'm a kind of boring dresser. So that's definitely the star of the show when I have it on.
Are you joining next year?
Oh yes, I'm sure.
I think particularly because everybody who's watching it is participating in this thing. And everybody is going through, because it's a mystery. I think that's the whole thing of it, that people don't know what's going on, what's going to happen. And, there's that mystery element that everybody is part of. It's not like somebody knows the answer and somebody doesn't. Nobody knows. And everybody wants to hear what you think because you have your thoughts on it. And anyway, I mean, we're not live right now. Are we talking? No. Okay.
I mean, they are talking, but like, I can put out. That's the
yes.
You see, that's the mystery of the humans of Westknits. You never know which part of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
What was your thought process throughout the clues? Like, how did it evolve in your world?
Well, I've done quite a few before. And I actually really enjoyed the fact that it appeared that the first clue was a lot of work, because I kind of realized that it could only become less work. After the first clue, it would probably be plain sailing, and it pretty much has. And it was slightly irritating, but I find that this mystery knit along brings up so many emotions, and sort of like, oh my goodness, I really don't know. What is he thinking? And what am I thinking? And maybe I shouldn't even bother. And, there's a whole lot of personal stuff that sort of comes into play. But I just love my colors. And if I love the colors, I pretty much will make anything, that sort of just give me colors that I don't like, and I can't do it. It's just impossible. So I got very excited about my colors, and I added in a fourth color. So that really excited me. And I've enjoyed it. I think what I've really also found, because it's become such a public thing, through the Humans of Westknits and all the contact that everybody has with each other these days, we've also got quite a few WhatsApp groups that have sprung up in South Africa, people knitting it. And and I'm not a huge participator, but I like to check in and see what's going on. And it's just interesting, how many people have just given up and can't stand it. And everybody has opinions. And why didn't you do this? And why didn't you do that? And I find it very entertaining. So that's been part of it for me this time, which I haven't really experienced before. Before, I've just sat down and done the work, And I'm not mad about the shape yet, because in fact, mostly I'm not really mad about most of my work until I've blocked it. Then I can make a really good, educated decision about how I feel about it. I think it's very interesting and very different, and there's still things I want to do. I've seen some wonderful adaptations that's been really nice,
right,
with pom-poms and tassels. And so I feel that once I start playing with it, once I finish knitting it, then I can play with it. And then I'm sure I'll just love it totally, But it's been great. It's always just great.
It's funny to me. Like, I was watching you on your channel, on your YouTube, and there was this moment when you were like, I knitted the first clue, it was fine. The second one, I really hate it. And then I did this, and then I really hate it. And then it's like, and then like suddenly there is this, like, you look at this and like, and I think I really love it now. So it's like, it's almost like discovery of your own. And I had the same exact reaction to it, because when I chose the colors for this knit along, I loved it. Like, I think it's going to be, doesn't matter what Stephen will throw our way, it's going to be glorious. Then I knitted the first one, and I was like, it's sort of boring. And then the second clue, I was like, I really hate it. It's like, I don't even understand why I'm bothering with this. It's really not something I see myself wearing. It's just so weird. The third clue, I was like, okay, whatever he's thinking this time, it just looks like some patchwork that doesn't make any sense to me. It's just like I don't even understand. And then suddenly, when all of this came together, I had this moment like, oh my God, I absolutely love it. Like, there was this one moment when it's like it all somehow made sense. And I was like, okay, like, doesn't matter anything else. Like, now I love it, So it's like, it's very interesting how your perception of it can change throughout the work.
Absolutely. And, I think when you interviewed Stephen, and he said, part of it is he loves making people do things that they don't want to do. And that's quite a little sadistic side of him, I'm quite sure, He must be loving all of this. Oh my God, now they hate it, now they love it, and now they have no idea where I'm going. And he knows where he's going with it, but there's so much debating. It must be hugely interesting to him as well. And he's just added another level to the knitting experience, And I do, sitting here looking at the colors, it's definitely colors that I love. But actually, this is not going to be my shawl. This is a shawl that I will present to an exhibition that I'm part of in an art gallery. So it's going to end up being really an art piece kind of garment, which I'm very happy for, because that's what I'm looking to make,
Well,
And
think about Stephen, right? Like, you think he has it all as a master plan, or do you think it's also part mystery to him when he starts with this design that he doesn't really know where he's going, and then he's surprised at the end of what he created? Like, what's your feeling?
well, he says that, but I don't really think it's as free as, as it seems it is. I'm sure he has pretty clear, maybe the first piece he starts, he starts, just let's start doing a chevron piece and let's see where we go. And maybe, I mean, this braided thing is it's not a new stitch pattern style. It's actually, I've seen it in very traditional old patterns, actually, used quite differently. But let's use this technique and then build onto it. But he must have, in my mind, a shape at least in mind, because otherwise it is going to look very patchworky. And I mean, the overall shape, when I've seen people that have showed theirs, probably the test knitters who all have theirs finished and they show them first, on Instagram, they look really beautiful, hanging up on the wall as an art piece. But as you don't see it like that when you wear it, you see a bit of this and a bit of that. But yeah, I think he has a pretty good idea. Otherwise, he must be knitting and frogging and knitting and frogging, and I don't know, but I think he has a pretty clear idea. I'm sure a part of it is a mystery, but he has obviously a natural flair for designing. He's not just playing around with it,
Well,
and
this is like the 6th time you're participating in it, if I'm not mistaken. How do you compare it to the previous, as far as like division of labor throughout the clue, or like how you like the design as it grows?
Maybe the very first one I did was the first time just about the first garment I'd ever made of Stephen West. So I was quite sort of surprised and shocked, oh my God, can I do this? And so things took me longer to do. And I've always completed within the last week, but I've done a lot of like slogging away at the knitting. This one, I don't know what happened to me this month, but I've cast on and I've actually finished 2 other shawls in between. And, I've managed to play around with a lot of other stuff. So I feel that perhaps he might also really be trying to make it more available for first-time knitters, because there are lots of new knitters, make it more available and not so threatening and daunting, because this one I think has been pretty straightforward. There's been a lot of easy things, but, cast on, cast off, cast on, it's not a difficult thing at all. But I remember, for example, in that Speckle and Pop, there were those massive holes, and then you had to pick up 15 stitches around, and then you could even crochet around the holes afterwards. I loved all of that. That I didn't find there was much of that available, of extra stuff going on in this one. But I think from a design perspective, honestly, the slip extravaganza for me is really the best one that I have knitted, and I've made a few. And I love that one. And I will make it again tomorrow. And halfway through this one, I thought, well, I can always pull this out and make a slip extravaganza, which I'm not going to. But it must be really difficult, for him, because he's continuously designing shawls, and not mysteries, but he's continuing. And so in the mystery, there has to be, we all expect something different. We do. But then when the something different comes, people get like, oh my God, it's like this, it's like that, And it's like, that's what a mystery is, don't you get it? So what you get at the end is something unknown, and it's always different, but it's designed, and I think we're really lucky, we pay very little to get the experience, and you can make this thing 25 times over if you like, it's a privilege. I find it a real privilege. But I do know that it's got really huge. I find it's grown this year, and maybe thanks to you and Martin, but it's really grown, and it's become, a public thing. Like people like Westknits, Stephen West is a name that just rolls off people's tongues. who have never, been, when somebody said, oh, you knit, have you ever heard of Stephen West? That's the first sort of question I often get asked by very strange people. So who've never knitted. So yeah, it's, and that I enjoy this fact of knowing that there's like 15 or 20,000 or whoever knows how many people out there doing this thing, all of us going through stuff, because it's not like you just sit there and you're knitting a pattern. I mean, you go through a lot of your own personal stuff related to how you approach unknown, Okay. And I feel I learn a lot about myself every time, I do.
How are you enjoying the MKAL?
I am enjoying it very much. This is my first MKAL.
It was my first experience as well. Well, I mean, what did you expect from it, and what's happening in comparison to your expectations?
So I was a lurker for 2 years. Like I, not just sort of followed sort of along, but I would watch all of Stephen West's clues as if I were knitting it. And then that's where I found Martin on 365 blog. And I thought, I'd really like to do this. Can I put the time to it? Because it seemed like an extraordinary amount of knitting in a very short time. And I'm like, you know what? I think I can. And I think I'm gonna. So this year I sort of committed to it in September. And I'm in the Boston area. I'm up in Lowell. So I took a weekend with a friend. We went out to Webb's. I picked my colors. And I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And I think I wanted to do it because I like learning new stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think what I like most about the MKALs is, to be honest, not so much the product, but the techniques that go into it.
Well, do you think this is, now that all the clues have been revealed, do you think that would be a shawl you would pick normally to knit? Absolutely not.
like if I saw it now and said, am I gonna, buy the yarn, I would, no.
I mean, are you regretting joining it though?
No, I'll 100% do it again next year. Because I went into it liking certain things about Stephen West. I love his sense of color. I love color. So I was very attracted to that. I was very attracted to the techniques. And I thought, whatever comes out, it's going to be a piece of art. And if I hang it on my wall like a tapestry, that's what it is, So I don't regret it at all.
Did you find it overwhelming with the amount of knitting that was required?
No, I didn't, which surprises me. Because it was an awful lot of knitting. But I think I was just ready to do it. Like I had sort of decided, okay, October's the month, I'm going to knit this and only this. And I'm not really a monogamous knitter. I like to have several projects on the go. But I sort of cleared my plate and said, this is what I'm going to do. And it became almost like an assignment, like a challenge to get it done. And then when I saw the first clue, I was like, I don't remember first clues being this intense. but I just kept going, and I figured, just keep knitting.
Did you manage to stay on schedule?
Pretty much. I slipped I think a day for clue 2. So I finished clue 1 on time, which was to me unbelievable. And then for clue 2, I went to Rhinebeck.
Right.
So I ended up slipping, I think I didn't start clue 3 until maybe Saturday after it came out. But that ended up not being a problem because it was so manageable.
Right. Well, do you think if you were Stephen West and you needed to divide those clues, would you do the same thing he did, or would you change things around?
I think the only thing I think I might have done is the cabling portion that was sort of the second half of clue 2. I thought that could have been combined with clue 3 and still been a manageable chunk. Because even though those sort of wings with the garter short rows weren't hard knitting, it was still a lot of knitting.
Right.
But, again, I didn't really have that much of an issue getting the cabling done. And that was easier knitting. but I don't think you could have broken up clue 1. I think clue 1 had to be what it is.
What kind of colors did you choose for yours?
I chose, here I have it right here.
That's beautiful.
So
I
chose sort of like a caramel brown, and then a variegated with sort of like cream with speckles, and then my pop is the bright green.
Are you completely done with it?
No. So I finished this side, and I'm well on my way to finishing this side, which, you know, goes so much quicker as you go because the rows get shorter and shorter. I think I decided that I'm going to do sort of the shorter bind off, like instead of doing that extra piece, for a couple reasons. First of all, I kind of don't love that extra piece, but I'm kind of done with it. like now I'm at the point where there are other things I want to do. And the other thing I had done is I had put off doing the accents here until I sort of saw what the shawl was going to look like. And I decided that, like, this green is sort of one of my favorite colors anyway, that once I sort of do the earlier bind off, I'm going to also do the accent colors and then call it a day.
Right.
So
I think you joining the knit along next year.
Absolutely. I loved the sense of community. So I think one of the things I feel like I'm missing, and I don't know what part of the region you're from, but I feel like right now in this Lowell area, there's a real lack of a local yarn store that has sort of establishes a sense of community. So I'm sort of starving to interact with other fiber artists. And I started doing that virtually during the pandemic. And then, you know, just sort of seeing all the people doing it, I just sort of felt like, you know, I was sort of part of the group and I felt really connected. You know, and then it was interesting because when I went to Rhinebeck, my friend and I actually took the bus trip from Webb's.
Right.
And I was working on the shawl on the bus. And people were like, "Oh my God, are you doing the Stephen West MKAL?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Show it," you know, and I'm like holding it up and like, "Oh my God, I'm not done with clue 1 yet." And, you know, it was just sort of everybody knows about it. And then, you know, yesterday, I follow the Knit Girls, and I was on a virtual knit night with them. And they're like, "What are you working on?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's the MKAL." And I think it was Leslie said, "Oh, I love it when people do that because I know I never could." You know, and so I just like sort of feel like it's a badge of honor, like sort of accomplishing it. And I love the clues. I love the excitement. I would wake up Thursday morning. The first thing I did was look at the clue. I love the new techniques. I loved everything about it.
Well, do you think like Stephen taught you something in this MKAL?
Absolutely. So my favorite clue was clue 3. And I love doing the cables without the needle. Like, I found it very relaxing, very zen. I love the way it looked. I love the texture. And I'm working on a sweater for my husband that has sort of like small cables. And now I feel like, oh, I could do these without a needle, and this is going to go so much quicker.
Well, what are you as a designer thinking about the design we are working on?
Well, I love it. I absolutely love it. Its construction is so, well, when I get to the rest of the clues, the construction is so inventive. It really, really is. It really was twists and turns all the way. Never really knew what was going on next.
Which clue are you on now?
I'm like a couple of rows shy of finishing clue 2.
So does that stress you out at all that you like behind the schedule?
You know, it did at the beginning, like towards the end of week 1, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get this done. And then I took a kind of a deep breath. I'm like, it's okay. Not everybody else is going to finish either. This is not a race. So I'm all the way team embrace your pace from like the first week.
Well, but did you look ahead? Like, did you sneak peek the next clue and the next clue?
Yes, I have, just kind of to see what I need to get ready for as far as timing for the week, because I run a hardware store full time, so my knitting time isn't always as much as I would like it to be. But yeah, so I've looked ahead, and I'm kind of glad I did, especially looking at what clue 3 was. I think I'm gonna throw another color in there for the embellishment.
So this is your first time knitting Mystery Knit Along, right?
Yes, it is. First time for the mystery knit along, and also first time for any Stephen West pattern at all.
Right. Are you enjoying the mystery part?
Actually, I really am. I'm totally a process knitter. So I'm like on the edge of my seat. Where's it going to go? Where's it going to go? Because I kind of watched from the sidelines last year during Shawlography. And that's how I, met Martin, or not met Martin, but that's how I got acquainted with him, is watching his journey through it. And I was just like, brioche, what? So, I'm all about the mystery.
Well, now that you know what this shawl looks like, and you know what other shawls by Stephen West look like, would that be a shawl you pick to knit?
I'm gonna say no, not at first, but the more I look at it, the more it grows on me. And if I had seen it all together, I mean, to me, depending on the colors, it can look very Tim Burton-esque. It's very appropriate for, especially with some people's colors, it's very appropriate for the fall holidays too. It's very graphic. It's especially people that have picked like really solid colors.
Right.
But I also love how, people who have more variegation, it's a lot more subtle, which to me sometimes is a little more interesting. But I love it so far.
Do you think you're going to wear it, or is it going to somebody else?
I will 100% wear it. I will 100% wear this. Probably so much that people I love will say, pick something else.
Well, do you see yourself doing it again next year?
Oh, yes. I'm actually, after I'm done with this, I'm hoping sometime next year to do either slip stravaganza or shawlography, just to, get the whole schlanket thing is very, very attractive to me. I love it. And I'm feeling a little bit more brave about color choice these days. Gee, I wonder why. Thanks, Stephen. But I just want to try all the things. I want to knit all of the Stephen West right now.
Well, this week, Martin and I are going live with Stephen and Linda, and we're going to talk about their experience of Mystery Knit Along. Is there something you would want to know from Stephen?
Probably the same thing everybody else kind of wants to know is how do you come up with these things? How do you make the construction the way that you do? But also, I want to know if there are any color combinations that make Stephen uncomfortable.
Oh, that's a good question. I like that. So I'm gonna ask
that. Awesome. Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to the live too. I hope I can join.
What do you think attracted you to my collaboration with Martin?
The way that you guys seem diametrically opposed, the way you do. When you speak to each other, it's like you've known each other for years and years, but watching both of you independently, I never would have put the collaboration together, but watching the two of you, especially during the ramp up before everything started, it was like, this is going to be fun. I want to be a part of this.
I think Martin didn't know what he signed up for when I suggested this collaboration. He might have regretted it a few times.
Oh, I don't see why. He's so affable. It seems like nothing really phases him, especially like when I watched his disaster video. I was thinking that like all of the stitches had fallen off the needles and he was going to have to reknit everything. I'm like, oh, tension? I never thought of that. But watching him deal with his stuff, it seems like nothing you could throw at him would faze him, especially now he's like, I'm not going to get done. Not yet. It's okay. I love that you're going to be there at the finish line waiting for him.
Yeah, that's what's happening now. I'm
Mhm.
waiting. I'm very, very patiently waiting for him to finish. And then we'll do a little reunion for Humans of Westknits and all our twists and turns. Did you have any disasters along the way? Like, did something happen that you were like had to undo or stressed you out?
The only thing that kind of stressed me out was having to stop knitting on it for a while for Rhinebeck. There was no way I was bringing most of Clue 1 with me to Rhinebeck. It wasn't going to happen. Because if I did that, I feel like some disaster would have happened. No, I haven't had anything really, really bad happen. I love my colors. My tension's okay. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the next Clue and see what I can change, or not even change, but add.
Can I see your colors?
Absolutely. There are so many needles attached to this thing. It's like a spider. All right, so.
Oh, your colors are my colors practically.
They're very, very similar. I think mine, it's reading blue, but it's not. It's a really dark charcoal gray. It's
Right.
called Carbon. All the way over. I love these braids though.
Well, you're practically there. Like you did all the most difficult part of the.
Yeah, like I'm really excited to be going on with the long strips, and I'm absolutely going to be doing the embellishment, but I think I'm going to do it with this.
Oh, that's pretty.
It's kind of a color changing purple mohair.
That's gonna be very pretty.
I hope so. It's hand spun of mine that I've done a long, long time ago and just never found the place to use it. So I think this is where it'll
perfect. That would
yeah,
definitely be
some of
perfect.
its home here, I think.
Are you disappointed that there's no brioche this year?
A little. I literally learned brioche this summer for a knit log. Like, it's got to show up. It's shown up in the last several that I've seen, and no brioche. I'm like, well, okay.
Well, you know how Stephen has two dogs, one called Brioche, one called Stitch. Like,
Yeah.
if he gets a third one, do you have any prediction about the name?
That's an interesting question. So brioche, Stitch. I'm hoping it's not going to be Pearl.
Twist.
Or Twist. Braid. Flat. There you go. Flat.
That's
or plate.
Or cable.
That would be cute. Okay. Although then people would say, oh, look, it's the cable guy.
That's true.
For those of us old enough to remember Cable Guy.
How are you enjoying the clue you're working on right now?
Oh, well, I'll show here. Spoiler alert for anybody who wants to hear that. So I'm only on. I wanted to get a whole row done, but I have done. I'm out of cast on, cast off land. Finally, I finished that. And then so now I'm kind of meandering along clue 2.
Are you
oh yeah, I'm enjoying. I'm wanting to kind of take my time with that because I know that you know, when I get to clue 3, it's going to be a little like, you know, the kind of cables that I've never done before. And so
I love the third clue. I think like,
okay, cool.
I think like third clue was my absolute favorite actually.
Okay, yeah, because yeah, I wasn't sure about the cables, and so I thought, well, you know, I've been really addicted to duplicate stitch, like making little pictures, you know. And so I thought, I wonder if, you know, that would be really pretty if I made some like little pictures in those straps. But then you and someone, maybe the man Scott, Mr. Scott or Scott, y'all are talking about how meditative it was, and I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll try it.
I really liked it. It felt like almost you know, like Tai Chi kind of thing, like when you slowly, like when you watch your hand move and like you slowly,
Oh,
every movement fluid, like it felt like that to me. It felt like very meditative.
cool. And I remember you guys said it was like calligraphy almost, like a,
Like it's
yeah, and I love,
like you're trying
art.
to create this minimal amount of movement and to make it dance a little bit.
Huh.
Like it felt like really lovely. I don't know. I think you're gonna enjoy it.
Okay, well, I'm excited. I'll try it for sure. I do get kind of I get off track a little bit sometimes and do my own thing with the shawl,
What,
you know.
what about Stephen West designs attracts you?
Oh, so I love how, in a way, it's very simple. You know, your eye kind of moves like really, you're looking along this landscape and then you see these really nice design stitch patterns, you know, and it really allows you to get the most out of these stitch patterns, you know, when there's a really nice background. There's that. And then there's also, I sort of really like feel connected to the whole like inclusivity like feel that you get, you know. It's kind of, and it's not, it's they're kind of off the beaten path, but not too, you know, not too weird, you know, like it's like almost to the point of weird, but then, you know, but then he steers you back you know, into a good pattern. So I like it, you know. I like
knitting for forever and ever, right? Like you started knitting as a kid.
Yeah, well, I tried. My grandmother tried to teach me. I have never been really good at sitting still. It's one of the things I love about knitting is it gets me to sit still and, you know, and just relax and chill out. And you know, so I'm starting, the older I get, the more I realize like how much that does, you know, for a person.
When you choose patterns to knit, what attracts you? Like, do you go for new technique? Do you go for something like mindless kind of TV knitting? Like, what usually your cup of tea?
Well, I have a lot of memorization skills that I kept from when I was younger, and like I was in stage productions and acting and stuff, and so, you know, I had to quickly get a lot of memorization skills. So I like to pick up a new technique and then you know, see how fast I can memorize it, and then turn it into like my my kind of meditative, or I like to listen to books a lot on tape. And so I do like mindless knitting. You know, I knit a lot right now. The past couple of years, ever since the pandemic, I've just like that whole hashtag like knit, never not knitting, always, you know, always. And so that's you know, so sometimes mindless. You know, I get, you know, and then I get bored, and so I want to learn something new. Like just recently I made, my son loves Elmo. He's very young and he really is just addicted to Elmo, and so I found a skein of yarn that had a little Elmo head on with it, so you can make a hat. But I made him a scarf and I wanted to put a keyhole. I wanted to shove Elmo head through it, so a little keyhole. So I learned how to do a keyhole. It was kind of brave, you know, because I'd never done it before and I only had the one skein. But it works, so yay.
Well, what's knitting for you? Like, is that your time to meditate? Do you wear all the stuff you need? Like, do you look at it as a practical kind of like garment making skill, or is it just purely for meditation?
Well, it's a lot for like therapy and meditation. You know, if someone, so like the business that I do, if someone wants to like learn art therapy with you know, with knitting, if they're into it, it's happened a couple of times. I'll teach them how to knit and really teach them, you know, the practice of it. But then like I really started knitting in Alaska, and so it was kind of a necessity because, you know, I needed it for clothes and then something to do. Like, you know, you can imagine in Alaska, yeah, the dark months and stuff, you need to like really be proactive about finding stuff to keep you sane. And so you know, it was really a necessity. And then the clothes, you know, it's like a win-win. But then, you know, I moved back to Virginia, and you know, I mean, there is not very many cold days. I mean, there's, you know, some days are cold, in the mornings it's freezing, you know, in the evenings, you know, it's chilly, but, you know, it's more of a luxury. And then, so I, you know, since I just I don't want to get out of the habit, and, you know, I don't want to leave my knitting behind. You know, I really use it. But yeah, it's, I do wear, you know, here in Virginia, and I really haven't, I know I need to, but, you know, I need to start like knitting like little t-shirts and maybe tank tops and like stuff that I can wear a little more. But I'll wear my shawls, like, I'll wear like stuff like this. I'll wear it like as a skirt. I've figured out that I can really wear these giant shawls as like skirts.
Oh, that's very
You
clever.
know?
I like that.
Yeah. And look how cute it is, like a little ruffle kind of.
Is it always a conversation starter, like when you go wearing your hand knits outside?
Not too often, because, you know, there aren't as many people that knit in, you know, like where I live, where it's a little bit warmer. You know, I will usually be the one that starts the conversation out like in a knitting store. You know, I'll be in a craft store. And I'm starting to realize, as you ask me that, like, I think most of the time, like, I'm usually spending time in like, you know, LYSs and craft stores. Like, you know, I'm just always talking about knitting, because it's, you know, because it's a lot of the time it's what I do when I leave the house, is like I go to like a you know, yarn store or Joann's or Hot Topic.
If you had a chance to go to Amsterdam to Stephen and Penelope, do you think you would be concentrating more on yarn or on Stephen?
That's such a hard, see, I've traveled so much to like visit friends that I would be, I think I'd have to like, you know, write Stephen and be like, hey, you know, when are you going to be around? Because I just want to at least, you know, meet you. Like, I'd love to knit together or like do something. But, you know, it's just because see, when I was in Alaska and I started knitting about the same time that his books came out. And so it's almost been like a, you know, like a parallel, you know what I mean? And so it's almost like he's always been kind of in my awareness, you know, and like I was, you know, I've written to him before with the mystery knit alongs and stuff. And so it'd be like, you know, I'd want to do that, but then I'd want to see like all that yarn, you know, that they're always talking about in person, like, and just learn, you know, and then of course I'd have to get over like not knowing the language. I'd have to learn a little bit about that.
Well, did you learn something new this year with the Mystery Knit Along?
Oh yes, I learned that that first clue is kind of like a mind blower, you know. I knew that, you know, I knew that there would be at least one or two new techniques. See, the thing is, what I'm really going to learn, as I haven't done it, I mean, I haven't done yet, what I'm really looking forward to is the cables. I've never, as long as I've been knitting, you know, I learned how to knit when I was a teenager, and then, you know, I really started knitting 15 to 20 years ago, and I've never done cables. And so I'm like really excited.
You're gonna love them. They simple enough that it's like, it's not very challenging to learn. They're like perfect cables to learn on.
Awesome. Yeah. And I like how they're you know, he describes them as like antlers, and I guess that's what the technique is called. Yeah. And I think that's kind of cool. But
the only danger of cables that I see is that they're extremely addictive, and you might become a cable knitter for life from that point on. So.
What, do you know the knitting bartender? Do you know that guy?
He was on my channel. He was one of the guests, one of the earliest of my channel.
I've been, you know, I've been trying to binge as much as I can, you know, because I know you've done a lot of interviews, and I've been watching, and they're so meaty, like they're so you really get into it, you know, that it takes me a while to digest, you know, after I watch. And so yeah, so I've talked to him a little bit, Keenan, and he does a lot of cables, and I'm like so trying to talk him into like publishing a few patterns. And so like maybe that'll be some more impetus, you know. Like, come on, man, like we want cables.
Keenan is magical with cables. His sweaters are just like work of art.
Yeah.
Are you doing next year? Did you already decide?
I sort of feel like I have to, like because I do the Facebook group, you know, the Westknits Knitting Kittens. If anybody wants to join, people are joining left and right, you know, during the mystery knit along. You know, it's sort of like one of those things I like sort of feel like I have to, but I don't, like, that's okay. Like, it'll be fun. Even if you're not sure, I am okay. Like, I know some people do not like the thought of, you know, buying a bunch of yarn or finding a bunch of yarn, you know, going through all that, and then they don't like it, you know, like they don't like it. But like, I don't know, I'm okay. Like, what's wrong with giving it away, you know? Yeah, I'm in. I think it should be a lot of fun, and plus, like we were just talking about, like you learn all kinds of new techniques. Like, I'm excited about the cables, and that's another thing I learned. So cable cast on. So I didn't know how to do that, and like I would see it on sweater patterns, and I'd just be like, oh, that's nice, and just like do whatever I was gonna do anyway. And so now I know how to do it.
You know, I have my own accounting practice, and I always feel like Cinderella. I say, okay, if I can get these chores done, I can go to the ball, which to me is knitting.
That's too funny.
And I always have my knitting right here. This is my desk where I work, and I have a little pull-out over here,
right,
where my knitting always sits. So
well, let's talk about this MKAL. What made you decide to join it this year?
Well, the first one I ever did was the slip extravaganza, and I just totally love his stuff. You know, to me it's artwork,
right? And
my best friend became a knitter, and she came to see me one time, and she had her knitting bag with her needles sticking out, and I go, "What's that?" She goes, "Oh, I knit." I'm like, "What have you lost your mind?" Because the stereotype is old ladies sitting around knitting toilet tissue cozies, you know. And I thought, she goes, "Oh no, it's all about the yarn. I'm taking you to a yarn store." Of course, you know, I'm an accountant. We're very frugal, otherwise cheap, always looking at expense. So she walked into this yarn store with all of the yarn and the colors and the textures and the knitted objects. And I just went nuts. And she takes me over to the Malabrigo section, and she goes, "Let's start you out with some Malabrigo Rasta," which was the big chunky.
Right. She
goes, "Pick a color that you like." So I picked out a bright color, and I pulled it out, and I said, "Valerie, this is $25. She goes, "Yes, and you need 2 of them." You know, I was used to seeing the stuff you see at, you know, Michael's or Walmart for $1.99 for a bucket, you know, a skein like this big. So I had no idea, and nothing wrong with that yarn, by the way. But I thought, oh, okay. So we got needles and markers and everything $100 later, you know.
Well, was it difficult for you to learn? Like, how did you
No,
learn?
we went to Steak and Shake, and she cast on, and she goes, "Let me show you how." She goes, "It's easy. It's 2 sticks and a twist." Okay. So she showed me how at Steak and Shake over lunch. And then I went home and I started to practice, and I started to play. And then, of course, I went to YouTube and practiced on that. And I was not afraid of doing it wrong. You know, like when I first, you know, learned how to do anything, I never did it perfect. Like, I remember I have 2 kids. They're now older. And I remember my daughter, when she was born, first bath, I mean, you know, I'm dabbing around her, she might break. My second kid, I took the hose to him. You know, so I thought I'll get better at this. And I just really loved it. I couldn't believe how much I loved it. So I just kept getting better and better patterns. Well, Christmas time came and she gave her mom a shawl, and it was The Doodler by Stephen West. Of course, I didn't know Stephen West from a hole in the ground. And she goes, oh, this is a Stephen West. Well, what's that? So she told me about him. So of course I have to Google him on YouTube. And I thought, holy smokes, this guy's fun. He's neat. I like this. But she told me that Stephen West stuff was really hard. Oh, it's really hard. So I'm thinking, well, I'm new. I probably won't be able to do it yet. But then I thought, so then this came out and I kept getting better. You know, I was doing lace patterns and I mean, really advanced. When I saw her again, I showed her what I had done. She was, it took me 10 years to get that good. I'm like, well, I just practice. It's what I do all the time. I mean, when my kids are grown and gone, you know, all I have to do is do my work at my business, accounting, cook dinner for my husband when he only likes steak. So that's easy to make, and knit. That's all. I mean, I don't have to do anything else.
Well,
so I just got good at it.
Are you guys competitive now, like with each other? Who does it faster?
No, it's funny because she likes to she casts on a lot of projects. She's like Barton.
Right.
You know, she casts on a lot of stuff. In fact, one time I was visiting her in Colorado, that's where she lives, and we counted 45 projects.
That's a lot.
Needles. 45.
I think it's a lot like for Martin.
Yeah. I go, I just get bored with it and I get something new. Something else catches my eye. I'll get it done one day. Right. So I start something and then I finish it. Now, I might pick something up in between. But normally when I get on a project, I want to finish it. Like when this MKAL came out, I was working on another mystery knit along, a Shetland lace knit along that released a clue once a month.
Right.
And the clue started in January, and I was in March, and I thought I got to catch up. So I was catching up. You know, we went through the hurricane, Ian,
right,
came through. So I had a couple days there I could catch up because we had no internet, no phone. We did. So what else are you going to do? Knit. I was in heaven.
Right.
So I caught up, and which just started right when the MKAL started. So I go, let me finish up to the next clue. So I was into 5 days before I started it.
Well, what do you think, like this year in comparison to previous years? Like, what do you think about this specific knit along?
Well, I love them all. I mean, you know, I know a lot of people weren't happy with it initially because of the braids going up. I thought, where's he going with this? I mean, you know, coming on those long threads that he had on clue 3, I'm like, what are those? I mean, what's he going to do? I mean, so then when I saw clue 4, and I mean, I would stay up at night to say, oh, it's going to drop tonight. It was like, well, it was like the Academy Awards. You know, what's it going to be? You know, so I when I raced to the end, I mean, and I went, oh my gosh. I mean, I don't know how he comes up with this stuff. It's just, they're just beautiful.
Where are you now with the clues?
I'm finishing up clue 2. I'm on the cable. Here it is.
I love that.
So I'm on the first cable. I did add a little embellishment. I added the pink. And then
sense. Like, I think I actually like that as an idea. I wish I've seen it because I jumped head first, like in the first clue, and then I saw people doing that, and I was like, why didn't I think of that? So
what's nice is when people finish before you, you can see what changes that they made.
Right.
Like in the this one, I did not like the border, which were those big solid colors. So I took another one of his patterns. I forget which one it was, and I put my own chevron border at the bottom.
Right.
But I mean, I'm on clue 2, 80%.
Well,
you know,
I mean, does that stress you at all that you like falling behind, sorry to say?
No. I mean, I am amazed. I mean, how these people are already done. They must they're like the little busy bees. You know, I don't know how they do it. You know, but I'm very methodical. You know, and you know, I planned it out. I'm counting all the time, brings in, I make Excel spreadsheets for my patterns, color in the stuff. I mean, my friend Barry, she thinks I'm kind of crazy.
Well, you mentioned to me that you go to a lot of conferences and you always wear your shawls. Like, yep. Are you planning to do it with Twists and Turns?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm so people know I'm an accountant, and I teach at a lot of accounting conferences. Like next week, I'm going to be in Fort Lauderdale teaching at the FICPA conference. And I always wear black, and then I wear my shawls. And I'll drape them over the stuff and I fling them around. And so people will always comment. And now people know me, they want to know what I'm going to be wearing. So all the knitters will come and talk to you. And of course, if you're sitting in one of the halls at the convention, I'm sitting there knitting all the time. It might even be a dishcloth, but I'm knitting. It's like one time somebody came up to me after, and this older man came up and he goes, "Were you knitting?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "I'm a knitter too." "You are?" I mean, so it was great. I mean, you meet the best people. Well, yeah.
How did your friend group change like over the knitting years?
Well, being an accountant, working by myself in my office here, I didn't have a lot of friends. Not that I wasn't friendly, but when I discovered the knitting community, I thought all of a sudden everybody's friendly, everybody's nice. To me, that's the best part. I go up to my local yarn shop anytime. You can sit and knit and talk to people. So when we travel, I go find a yarn shop and I call up, "Do you have a knit night? Do you have a knitting time?" "Oh yeah, come on down." They all have tables. We sit around. I just jump right in. I love to see what other people are working on. I like to, tell me what you're working on. Tell me the color choices. You have friends wherever you go. And to me, that's the best part about being a knitter. It's my happy place. I never am sad knitting. Never and never.
What attracted you to my collaboration with Martin?
Well, I mean, I had heard about Martin. I just love watching Martin. He makes me laugh or smile, like him. "Oh, today I'm going this," he goes out, "I'm going to make my Christmas cakes and I'm making this apple," whatever he's doing. And I just enjoy looking his life. So then you did the collaboration, and I searched for Stephen West. I wanted to see what other people were doing with Stephen West. And I came upon your channel and I started to watch you and I thought, wow, you're a really great interviewer.
Thank you.
So I love Martin's entertaining, you're educating. So I knew you were going to ask me that question. So I go, okay, that's what I like about your stuff. You talk to the people like me, other people, and ask them. You ask great questions. You're a fabulous interviewer.
Thank you.
So I find I learn a lot from you, like what other people are doing and that kind of stuff. Martin, he's just fun to watch his life.
I love watching Martin's life.
I always look, I want the pop-up. Oh, Martin just posted, now with his Blocktober thing. I'm thinking, oh, he's going to be posting like twice a week, Of course, now it's over. He needs to do November-thon or something.
Well, the Christmas blog is coming. So
yeah, and I enjoyed when you would do your calls together, together when you were chatting along. That was a lot of fun.
Well, so this Friday, Martin and I hosting another live on his channel with Stephen West and the test knit coordinator for Stephen West. Do you have any questions for Stephen?
I want to know, how does he come up with his ideas? That, does he just pick up 2 needles and say, "Oh, this yarn is nice. Let me just start knitting." And he starts with his I cords. He always starts with that. And I love the I cords. Let me go this way. Let me go that way. Let me see what I can come up with. Or does he sketch it out at first? Or does he just let the yarn kind of go? I mean, how does he come up with these braid things in this one? How did he think of that?
Well, I hope you enjoyed this chapter of Humans of Westknits and meeting these beautiful knitters who participate in this year's Mystery Knit Along. If you want to know how Stephen does what he does, please join Martin and I tomorrow on Knit 365 vlog. It's Martin's YouTube channel. And we're going to go live with Stephen West and Linda, his test knit coordinator. And we're going to ask him questions about this mystery knit along. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comments here and we'll make sure to ask Stephen that. And also, if you enjoy Humans of West Knits, please consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you and happy knitting.